Once you have a child, your life is turned upside down, especially when it's unexpected to be a single mom. And part of my journey in my career and in learning about finances is to be able to show my daughter that she can do anything and to show her that she has control over her finances and over her destiny. My name is Emma Sadler. I'm 29 years old. I make about $75,000 a year, and I live in New York City. I work as a UX designer at a medical startup, and I also work part-time as a shipping coordinator with an ice cream shop here in New York City. Both jobs that I work are remote. In my UX designer position, I am right now on a probationary period, and so shortly I'll be able to renegotiate my salary. UX designers typically in New York City start at around $80,000 a year, and you can work up to 6 figures. I live in a brownstone on the Upper West Side, and I actually live in my childhood home. So I live with my daughter, who's 9 years old, and I also live with my mother, who is 72 years old. So 3 generations living under one roof. It is a 1-bedroom, so it is a little tight, especially with all of us home, but it's actually been really great during this time period. This is a picture of me from the orphanage in Russia, and I am 6 months old. I'm adopted from Moscow, Russia, and I was adopted at the age of 1. And I've lived on the Upper West Side ever since in this apartment. My dad was a graphic designer and an artist, and my mother was a paralegal secretary at a law firm. So being adopted all of my life, it was never a shock. My parents were taught by the agency to always tell me that I was adopted ever since I was little. I just remember around the age of 7 asking a few more questions and wanting more details about my adoption. So my second year at FIT, my dad ended up passing away very suddenly. Here's a picture of my father and I, and this picture is one of my favorites because he's comforting me because I ran into a pipe in the sandbox as a little girl. My dad was a stay-at-home dad with me, so. With his passing, I kind of lost the spark for graphic design. And so I ended up pivoting and moving into pastry school. And I was thankful enough that my mom actually paid the huge portion of that school, and I was left with only $3,000 in my name. I pay $400 a month to live in the apartment. The total rent is actually $1,400, and that is due to the fact that we are rent stabilized and that this apartment has been in my family since the mid-70s. And so we are getting an unheard of deal now for this apartment, so I'm really grateful that we are able to stay in this neighborhood. I decided to take on also the bill of food for everybody in the household. So I don't just pay for my daughter and I also pay food for my mom. So about a year ago, I ended up getting into minimalism. I realized that I wanted to choose where my money went. So instead of my just throwing money around to buy something I think looks really nice, I'm instead making conscious decisions when I use my money. One of our favorite recipes that we always bake from are spice muffins. And so they're from this very old cookbook. In the cookbook itself, there is actually our bookmark is a picture of myself. I was around 7 years old in this picture, baking with my mom. So pre-pandemic, my career trajectory was to become a general manager and continue to move up the managerial ladder, maybe even into operations in the food industry. And right as the pandemic hit, everything kind of turned upside down in New York City, and my position was one of the first ones to get cut. It was really tough because I did sit my daughter down to let her know that I was no longer going into work. I also wanted to be very transparent with her when money was very tight. So shortly after I lost my job, it was very clear that the industry I currently worked in at the time, which was the food industry, was getting extremely disrupted. I decided that I needed to look into other opportunities. So the UX bootcamp cost $12,000. It was a big self-investment. The great thing is that they have a 2-year repayment plan with no interest. So in 2022, in August, I should be completely done with the $12,000. A big reason that I pivoted my career was at being a manager in the food industry. You are working around 10 hours a day, on your feet all day. Being a single mom, I wouldn't see much of my daughter. I would leave before she had to go to school. Now I have more flexibility to be home. I have flexibility to have more time with my daughter than I ever did before. As a single mom in New York City, it can be very, very difficult. The great thing about living in New York City, though, is that there are a lot of free things that you can do with your kids, including going to the park. I am also blessed with the fact that I don't have to pay such a hefty rent. I think if I also had to pay the rents in New York City, being a single mom, it would be paycheck to paycheck. It isn't part of her doing good in school, though. She doesn't just get the money. She does have to work for it. With that right now, I gave her the option of either having physical money or having it to go towards in-app purchases for the game Roblox that she likes to play. And so currently she's decided to go with the in-app purchases, but I'm thinking about changing that model structure soon. Being a mom during the pandemic, especially a single mom, there have been a lot of ups in terms of having more time with my daughter, but there's also a lot of struggles from the fact that we live in a 1-bedroom space and my daughter has to do school online and I have to work online. And so trying to balance those boundaries of work and home life can become blurred. So when the pandemic hit and I lost an income, it really made me realize how much I didn't know about money and budgeting and finances in general. So being home and being someone who just loves to learn and is constantly curious, I decided to start looking into financial literacy. I do know a chunk of it was because I was trying to keep up with the Joneses in a way of trying to also provide for my daughter all of the experiences, and paying for a child to go and do classes and things can add up really, really quickly, and I wasn't keeping an eye on it. I actually did have around $6,000 in my savings at the time, and realizing that I was going to be so unsure of what was going to be happening, I decided that once my unemployment started to kick in, I was going to take all of that savings to throw down onto my debt. After I eliminated my credit card debt, I have been able to build back up my savings, and I currently have $2,600. So for my daughter, I've decided to max out my Roth IRA. In the near future, I can pull out for certain academic reasons. Since I don't know what she wants to do with her future, it's a better place to put my money. I think it's so much more rare these days to have family living with family. The United States has kind of pushed this independence, and so a lot of people almost feel ashamed to be living at home or living with their family because it makes it seem like you haven't made it. And I definitely felt that pressure for a long time, feeling like I had to get out. You know, I'm a single mom, I need to show that I can take care of myself. But at the same time, I've been able to have so many more opportunities because I decided to stay home and live with my mom and, you know, help her out while she also gets to help me out with my daughter.